In case you missed it, quite the explosive interview with former Barcelona director Javier Bordas in Mundo Deportivo at the weekend, saying we had the option of buying Kylian Mbappé for 100 million when we were pursuing Ousmane Dembélé, but the technical secretary preferred Dembélé. The explanation at the time was that Mbappé played for himself and Dembélé plays for the team. Haaland didn't join Barcelona because the technical staff told me that he wasn't a Barca type of striker, that he was not a player with Barca DNA. The truth is that players come and you don't know how they will perform. Sid Lowe is still with us. Sid, how has this been received by Barcelona fans?
Well, I mean, that particular part of it, I think most people are kind of have got their heads in their hands a little bit. There is a little bit of a doubt about how much of this is real, how much of this is a kind of a sense of fantasy from Bordas, whose whole interview is really quite bizarre, actually. All the way through the interview, there are elements of it that don't quite fit right. There's a sense, clearly, of course, of him talking himself up, of him trying to make himself sound important, but at the same time trying to make himself sound like someone who should have been listened to more and wasn't listened to enough. But if this particular part of it is true, and of course most people are making the assumption that at least in basic terms it's true, I mean, it's just mind-blowing, isn't it? And it's not just mind-blowing now, with hindsight, having seen how these two players have played out. It really isn't, because even then, I think everybody already had Kylian Mbappé penciled in as the next best player in the world. You know, the guy that was going to lead the next generation of great players, post-Messi, post-Ronaldo. It was going to be Mbappé, and it wasn't going to be Ousmane Dembélé at that point. It's not like this is because things have gone badly since. I mean, if this really is true, it just beggars belief, to be honest.
Sticking with Barcelona, Sid, it's the first time I've had the opportunity to talk to you about those quotes from Antoine Griezmann's former agent, talking about Lionel Messi's regime of terror, talking about the fact that he's as good on the pitch as he is bad off it. What's been the reaction to that, and has there been any sort of semblance of truth to it?
Well, it's curious, actually, because my feeling is that given the strength of these remarks, given the significance of them, that there's actually been relatively little reaction. Now, I think there's a number of reasons for that. One is that actually this is something that I think a lot of Barcelona fans don't want to hear. I think it's something that a lot of Barcelona fans, and indeed even in the media, don't entirely buy, even if they buy bits of it, even if they'll accept part of it, don't entirely buy it. I think there's also the fact that, and you said it, this is the former, if you like, agent of Antoine Griezmann. And there are question marks, I think, asked there about, well, what's the reason for saying this? What's the motivation behind this? Is there something going on? Not least, of course, because if you're looking out for for Griezmann himself, if you're trying to do things the best you possibly can by him, this doesn't help. You know, even if it was true, it certainly doesn't help to say it publicly. Griezmann himself, of course, has made a point of not actually denying it, not actually giving it the credence to deny it, but you know, there was that photo he put on social media of him and Messi embracing. There was the fact that Messi gave him that assist in the last game, and I think there is this kind of concerted attempt to present a different portrait. Now, that said, of course, this comes in the context of that interview we saw with Quique Setién and Vicente del Bosque, where at the very least, for the first time, I think there is the discussion about, if you like, some of the consequences of the way that Messi is so important for the club, the way in which that changes perhaps the context and the culture around the club, and whether at times that's problematic. But I think while most people are prepared to accept that there are certain things that go with having a player like Messi, I don't think too many people are prepared to accept it in quite these terms. Now, had Eric Olhats come out and said, look, at times it can be difficult, at times things have to be done for Messi, at times Messi conditions the way the team play too much, I think most people have accepted it and actually said, well, this is a fair enough price to pay for having a player like Messi who's been the best in the world for whatever it is, 15 years. But it's the use of phrases like reign of terror that I think make most people kind of take a step back and just think, yeah, this is probably not something to engage with quite as much as we might otherwise have done.
Meanwhile, Sid, really disappointing news coming out of the Uruguay camp. Luis Suarez testing positive for the coronavirus. Of course, why this is so disappointing is that this weekend it's Luis Suarez's Atlético Madrid up against his old side Barcelona.
Yeah, it really is a pity. I mean, I know obviously some Barcelona fans will be thinking, well, we're really pleased that this hasn't been the case, but it really is a pity. And look, I say this as a journalist, and people always think we're biased. We are biased. We like good stories. We like things to happen that are interesting. And Suarez playing against Barcelona, and not just, by the way, playing against Barcelona, but Suarez playing against Barcelona with Atletico in a position where they could go top of the table, with Atletico looking very much like a genuine candidate for the league title this year, and with Luis Suarez playing such a key role in that, it feels like something's been taken away from us, and away from the league, by the way, not just away from people who aren't Barcelona fans, not just away from Atletico Madrid fans, but not just away from journalists either, by the way, and we're certainly not the most important people out there, but just a sense that it's such a pity, because this was part of that belief we all had that this year's title race was going to be really exciting, that this year's title race was definitely going to have at least a third candidate, maybe even a fourth, because let's see what happens with Real Sociedad. And it just feels like another part of the impact that the coronavirus is having on the purely sporting side of things. Now, of course, in health terms, it's far more serious. And yeah, it's a very big pity.
Can Atleti still do it, Sid, without Suarez?
Well, they've actually played quite well a couple of times without him as well. I personally think he's very important to the way that they're shifting in terms of their identity. Diego Simeone himself said it. There was a very interesting remark he made. I think it was before the last Champions League game, when he was asked about the shift in style, the fact that Atletico had the ball more, the fact that they were taking more shots, that territorially they were playing further up the pitch. And he said, look, the whole thing starts with Suarez. It starts with the fact that Suarez has different needs and different qualities to the kind of strikers we've had before. So everything has to evolve and shift because of him. But obviously that's been good for some other players. I think it's been good for Koke. I think it's been very good for João Felix, who's been really important. But that said, and to go directly to your question, possibly their best performance was away in Pamplona against Osasuna, when Suarez actually didn't play. And the combination that worked so well up front was Angel Correa with João Felix. So yeah, it's not implausible at all that they play and they still will beat Barcelona, because so far this season, even if we take Suarez out of the equation, the truth is Atletico Madrid have impressed more than Barcelona have.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.